What's good, everybody? It's your boy Yuri the Blender Magus, the host with the most, the Magus with the knowledge, and today we're gonna be sculpting more detail for Goku. So as you can see here, my mesh is a bit different than it was last time. I must not have saved my file last time because I opened up Blender and couldn't find it, so I had to redo some of the steps, and I just decided to do some of them slightly differently. Instead of one piece for the torso, I decided to separate it into two just to have some more control over these shapes here. So we got the upper part, the mid part, and the lower part. We have trap muscles, neck, head, deltoid, bicep, forearm, upper leg, knee, lower leg, cheeks. We have everything that is required. So what we're going to do is we're really just, so the thing about sculpting, guys, right, is that unlike modeling, it's not really exact. So you can go about this a couple of ways, but I think I'll just stick to teaching you how I normally sculpt, which is taking these shapes and reforming them until, or refining them until we get something that we like, and then we combine these shapes into the one object. So right now we're going to mainly be focused on the chest area, and I'm going to go into object mode and do something with these pictures. Going to check only axis aligned. That way I can't see them when I'm rotating around. But I can see them if I hit 1 and 3. It just helps unclutter the scene. So let's get started. Now, what's important about sculpting that you always have to keep in mind is that you need reference. I'm pulling up my reference on the other screen here, but always look for reference for what it is that you're trying to sculpt. It's just, you're always looking at reference. You have to look at reference for creating art in 2D. You have to look at reference for creating art in 3D. And just looking at reference helps you get a better understanding of what you're trying to do, you know, how to form certain muscle groups. It's just highly beneficial to have a tab with some reference images open. But that's enough yapping. Let's get to sculpting. Put on my artist glove. So what I like to do is this shape right here, we can just take it and remesh it, and let's make this 0.05 just to start off with. Let's remesh it. So you see, it's not that much different from its previous density. So we want to go lower. We're basically remeshing this so that it has more geometry to sculpt with. So let's do 0.0. Yeah, let's do 0.01. And then hit remesh. Okay. So Now the chest is a bit denser, and we can sculpt some more detail on it. I used to use dynamic topology quite a bit, but the thing is with dynamic topology is that it's pretty easy, at least for me, it's pretty easy to just go overboard with the amount of resolution in certain areas, and it would heavily bog down my machine. I'm gonna use clay strips here, and so, but you know, because it would bog down my machine, I had to figure out how to sculpt good amounts of detail, you know, without my machine lagging. And this is actually a good way to do that, aside from dynamic topology. So now when I sculpt, I mainly use like 3 or 4 brushes, clay strips being my main brush, this draw sharp for creases, the smooth brush obviously, the scrape brush. I don't use flatten, I use scrape. I think scrape is actually better than the flatten brush for flattening. I use pinch. I may or may not use snake hook, and sometimes I'll use some of the masking items here. But you know, I don't use I don't use every single brush that Blender has, because I kind of don't really need to. What I'm doing right here is I'm marking particular landmark areas in the 3D model that I know I'm gonna make more detailed later. So I got the chest, let's zoom out here real quick, and we can, so let's hit N and go to tools here, and let's look at the strength. Okay, see, and I actually don't like that on. So this little button here makes the strength and radius options universal for all the brushes. I don't really like that being checked on. I don't know why it was on, but I like to have all of my stuff at different strengths so that I can perform the different tasks with them a bit easier. There we go. Let's go back to the clay strips. Yeah, I just felt like it was a bit too strong in the strength. There we go. Okay, nice. Let's get the draw sharp. So, as you can see in our concept art, the chest goes a bit further down here, but we do need some space, some good solid space for these muscles that lay on top of the base of the rib cage. So you see why it's important that we basically went through and laid out these shapes so that when we start forming them, they comply with the front and side views. Now, granted, we're not about to be, because we're modeling it, so we're not about to be super exact trying to get everything to fully match one-to-one. In fact, in all actuality, you could probably just get rid of the background images from the direct background and just have these images in another view for you know, your reference. But you know, we're really just getting the shape and form of the muscles now and following this stylistic, you know, type of presentation. So it's really not much else to say as far as what I'm doing with the technique of sculpting. Basically, you just go in, you pick the next area or muscle group that you want to focus on, and you start laying out what you want that area to look like. You know, you make some creases here and there. You know, make some bold decisions about where the musculature is going to be. Okay. And you basically go off that. So a lot of this is going to be time-lapsed, but I will interject now and again to impart more wisdom onto you. I'm just pulling up some more reference here. So, looking at the back, you know, it looks like a heavily polygonal, shapy mess, and that's what your sculpts often start off looking like. You know, you can go in and smooth them, and you know, you refine them, but the sculpting process is it is a refining process. It's a process of making indications of shapes here, and you know, making indications of shapes there, and then adding more resolution to better define what those shapes actually look like, and then refining it even more until you get the desired result. So, you know, your sculpt, you're not going to start off with the supreme looking sculpt. However, the more time you spend refining it, the more time you spend looking at your reference and coming up with ways to creatively express the idea that you are trying to get out, then the sculpting process will get faster and smoother, and you'll be able to you'll basically be able to create any idea that you have. So at this stage, for this part of the torso, I'm going to leave the upper part alone, and I'm going to start working on the midsection here. And I'm going to remesh this to 0.1. So let's do 0.05. Okay, there we go. Yeah, you don't want it to be too subdivided too quickly. That's the quickest way to assure that your machine will start chugging on you. So a lot of what we're doing here is going to make a lot more sense after we combine it, and in fact it might behoove us to take care of the midsection at least now. So let's go to object mode, and how we're going to combine these pieces together is like so. We're going to go to our Fast Sculpt Addon. I'm going to put a link in the description where you can find Fast Sculpt, but basically that's an add-on you want to get that'll speed up your sculpting workflow process immensely. Basically, it enables you to do booleans a lot faster as far as sculpting is concerned. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a boolean operation to combine these four meshes here. So what I'm going to do is select first mesh, and the target boolean, so we'll actually make this the target. So we'll select this, select the midsection here, and then select the chest. There we go. So basically sometimes when you control Z your bool unions, one of your bools will straight up disappear from the history, and if you just hit control Z, shift control Z a few times, it may or may not pop back up, and luckily for me it did. So what we want to do is we want to be careful with our voxel size here. So first thing we want to do before we combine them is go through and control A and make sure that all of the scale for these objects are applied. And then I'm going to turn this voxel size to 0.005. And then we're going to select this, select the target bool union, and there we go. So now that we've remeshed it with a much lower voxel size, we have a lot more detail in here versus when we did it originally, which is what we want. Let's go back to object mode. We want to select this, the waist here, and keep our target the same, bool union, boom, same shape. Select our trapezoid muscles here, bool union, done. See how fast that was? And then we can now refine our shapes. So you might have seen people in certain time lapses ribbon up their muscles like this as they're creating them. I mimic this, and I honestly can only speculate as to its true purpose, but my speculation is that this is a technique for layering up the forms. And I mean, it's actually what I'm doing it for. I'm layering up the different, well, I'm layering up volume on top of itself through these strips, while not committing to like one big, you know, lump like that. Because you don't want to commit to big changes early on. You really want this to be a gradual process. Making big commitments, you know, that should come in when you're making your general forms and all that. Like the general form, you know, the shape of the overall body and stuff like that. That's when you want to make your commitments early on. Not necessarily when going in to add or subtract volume from your muscles. So this is kind of a conundrum. We could probably erase that crease there and make this the crease for these particular muscles. I think we might do that. Let's get that here, and let's go make sure. Yeah, there we go. I actually think I like that better. Because the shape was already there, pretty much. We want clay strips. Basically go over this real quick, except these parts have the most volume right here. There we go. And you'll know what I'm talking about, or at least, you know, you'll have an idea of what I'm doing here if you are looking at your reference that you've certainly opened up in your side tab too, help yourself follow along with the muscle groups, because you want your sculpt to come out even godlier than mine. So we definitely have our references open, and since we have our references open, certainly to all of the different types of muscle group, literally every one imaginable, it's like but we have all those tabs open right now. We can see the truth. Okay, the truth is knowable, and know it we do. I think it's control. Yeah, I'm a G. So I'm holding control and clicking to do the inverse of sculpt outward. I believe in ZBrush you hold Alt to do that, but in Blender Alt is, you know, your rotational button, so it's control here in Blender. Be careful, you don't want to add too much. I'm just gonna actually just start smoothing some of this out. But you see how we did all that layering, and then when I go in to smooth it out, it becomes less layering and more just a part of the sculpt. You get what I'm saying? Like, you can see the residual direction of where my brush was going when I created this area. This looks like the perfect area for me. So this is a stylistic thing that I like to do. I love taking these muscle groups like this and just putting like a flat surface over it. Just flatten it out. I think it looks really cool, super dynamic. And it reminds me of Joe Madureira and his comic book art. And he's my favorite comic book artist of all time. Even the only thing I'm trying not to learn from that man is the work ethic. I've heard stories, but I still can't. I mean, the man is, in my opinion, one of the many gods of comic art and 2D drawing in general. Joe Madureira. Shouts out to him. So yeah, I just like taking the muscles and flattening them out a little bit. Give them some more planar overall shapes. Take this, take that. So the thing about this here, right? This actually doesn't, you know, you don't really see that like that. You could if you wanted to, but we're not gonna. And see, this area is actually good so that we can distinguish the rib cage or the ab muscles from the rest of the torso there. Now you can bring this, you can leave this like it is or bring it inward. It's probably fine the way it is. I mean, that's actually how the rib cage kind of forms. You know, it comes out like that. I don't know. These muscles definitely lay more on top of said rib cage. Like, the rib cage kind of comes from beneath these two pectoral muscles rather than what it was looking like before. It kind of looked like it was almost on top. So yeah, you just go in, use your reference, look at how you want these forms to propagate around your character, and practice. So I don't know how many times I've made the male torso now, or any torso now, but I've made a lot of them. I've made a lot. And that's what you need to do to practice. So when you can, practice these techniques. Maybe practice them on different characters. You know, just you have to get repetition in order for you to really get the point of what it is we're doing. Like you can follow this video or set of videos and you just do the things that apply to this model, and that's cool. You'll be able to make this model, but if you don't sit down and apply what you've used to make this model to make other models, then you're gonna have a hard time. But you already know that. Like I said, this isn't a whole like technique for sculpting. Really just comes from how much you sculpt and how well you understand anatomy and things like that. And I think that's a good place to leave off for today. So you're basically, this is what we're going to be doing for the entire rest of the body here. I'm going to start with an area and then add some details to it. Subdivide it with the remesh and keep adding to it, keep working on it until we get a shape that we like. We combine the areas that need combining, do more refining, and move on to the next area. So that will be it for this particular video tutorial. Thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to my channel for more Blender tutorials, sculpting, modeling, texturing, rigging, animating, everything that you need to create a character. So, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Have a good one.